Meta, aka Facebook, Instagram, just recently lost this lawsuit to this woman who is in her early 20s who talked about her severe consumption of their products harmed her mental health. And so those companies, along with Alphabet, YouTube, et cetera, have lost a handful of these lawsuits where they're really looking at the effect of their products on the well-being of their consumers, especially as teenagers. And so I read a handful of articles about these lawsuits and what they mean and the next phases of them. And what was really frustrating to me is not the outcome of those lawsuits, which I think is good. I do think part of healthy market economies is that when people are creating products that harm people, that they're not allowed to keep putting products that harm people or selling them as good for people, false advertising. And I do think a lot of social media, YouTube, things like that amounts to a form of false advertising. It's selling people a better life, but actually actively harming them, especially as teenagers. What was frustrating to me was not the results of those lawsuits, which I celebrate, but it was actually the absence of an entire arena of discussion that I think is more important than those lawsuits. Yes, the United States government should protect citizens from bad actors who are harming people. Yes, companies that are harming the people with when they consume the products should be spanked and punished financially. But more than that, none of the articles I read discussing these outcomes at all lambasted or critiqued the parents of these teenagers or these people in their early 20s. Who is allowing unending 10 hours a day viewing of YouTube in their household? Who is allowing doom scrolling perpetually or permanently on TikTok or Instagram to happen in people's bedrooms? Who is allowing these young people, these teenagers, to go on endlessly filling their minds with brain rot content? Who's allowing that to happen? Yes, the companies, yes, the government, but the parents are the proximate cause of the harm done. Now, it's not just the volume of content, but the type of content that is being exposed to children and young people, teenagers, on a regular basis. That the idea that what is on the internet is neutral material is just simply foolish. I recently talked with a young man who was frustrated because his parents were limiting his internet access and limiting the stuff that he was able to watch. And he just said, I feel like my parents don't trust me. And I said, I think you're partially correct because you don't yet have a prefrontal cortex that is developed. And that's no shame on you. That's not a dig on you. That's just the fact that until you're 23 to 25, your brain's not fully there yet. And your capacity to delay gratification and make wise choices is still in process. And so if you're frustrated as a teenager that your parents don't yet fully trust your wisdom, that's par for the course. They should not fully trust your wisdom. You can't really, by definition, be wise until you're at least into your 30s, and just make peace with that. And because that's prudent. But that's not the main reason that I'm the limiter of the content of the things that come into my home and plan on doing that for my kids. The main reason is not that I don't trust my kids' wisdom. The main reason is I don't trust the people on the internet or the companies to have the best interests of my kids in mind. They are incentivized to make them addicts so they can view ads so they can get revenue. That is their goal as a company, is revenue. That is an okay goal as long as it's leveraged morally. But my main goal for my kids is their well-being, not that they would be instruments in the revenue ventures of Silicon Valley or other tech giants. That I cannot believe the lie that the content on the internet is neutral. I think is inherently has profit motives, which makes it inherently designed to be addictive, which makes it inherently deformative. And things don't have to be sexually perverse or fundamentally immoral for them to be destructive. They can just be brain rot material that's inhibiting their formation and their well-being. And so as parents, and as people, we need to recognize that we must be the limiters, the regulators, the screeners of the content that is hitting our eyes, hitting the eyes of our kids, and hitting the eyes of our community. Because revenue-oriented companies are not predisposed to care about your emotional, spiritual, or financial well-being. They are predisposed to care about their revenue, period. And therefore, it's my job to put a cap on what those companies are capable of doing. And so I hear stories about how Instagram is bad for teens' mental health. And I go, I don't think so. I think parents that have abdicated the regulatory role that they have in the house are bad for children's mental health, because parents who just hand their kids an iPad, hand their kids an iPhone, hand their kids the internet, and say good luck with the algorithms are basically like handing their kids a bottle of tequila, handing their kids a kilo of cocaine, and saying, you decide when to stop, you figure out what's good, I trust you. That's just stupid on behalf of parents. And I want us as a generation of young men, of parents, to break that trajectory, to recognize that these companies are looking to capitalize on our addictions, small and large, and that we should not trust them to care about the formation. So Instagram rolls out some brand new policy in 6 months that's good for teenagers. I don't buy it. Their goal is revenue. Their goal is not teenagers flourishing. And we have to filter through the propaganda and the PR of these companies and recognize that we'll be judged by God for how we regulate our own consumption on the internet and the consumption of our children on the internet. And so set hard, thick boundaries. Shelter your kids. Shelter is good. To be not sheltered is to be impoverished. Age appropriate sheltering is a good thing. People say, I don't want to have sheltered kids. I absolutely want to have sheltered kids. That's protection. That's why I have a roof over their head. I physically shelter them. I emotionally shelter them. I spiritually shelter them. I want them to be protected. Now, obviously, that protection needs to appropriately scale down as they age and develop maturity. But the idea that age of 9 to 13, I'm going to hand my kid an Instagram account is just insane. And so, yes, government should hold companies accountable, but more than that, we understand that God will hold parents accountable for our abdication and a refusal to be the real limiters on the content consumption we let our kids do. That prematurely exposing them to all these things creates an abusive environment where they're being harassed by ideas and material they don't have the filters yet to make sense of, and it's really harmful to them. And they're going to turn out to be dysfunctional adults because of what we've put into their minds at a premature young age.